Hello everyone, welcome back to the third lecture of Scalable Data Mining week 2. So in this lecture we will further discuss Spark programming and also how Spark internal uh, is about some Spark internals, like how the uh, task scheduling and job scheduling works. Okay, so we will begin with an example of PageRank. Okay, so what is PageRank? Okay, so the purpose of PageRank, so it's a machine or machine learning or data mining algorithm. So the purpose of it is to give different web pages ranks or scores. Okay, so scores can translate into ranks. Okay, what PageRank does is it gives them scores based on links to them. Okay, uh, so the underlying idea is that if there is a web page, let's say this one here, which has many pages linking to it, okay, then it should have high rank. Okay, not only that, if a page has many other high rank pages linking to it, then it should read to a high rank and consequently high score. Okay, so that is the key idea. So the algorithm works in an iterative manner to compute the page rank based on this principle. So what is the algorithm? So the algorithm is precisely this. So you randomly start, let's say, with the rank of each page set to 1. So you have a list of web pages. You set the rank of each page to 1. Okay. And on each iteration, any page P contributes the current rank of P by the number of neighbors of P. So the number of neighbors that this P page is pointing to. Okay, and it sort of gives this contribution to its neighbors. So basically, if a page is pointing to many neighbors, then it can contribute less to its neighbors. On the other hand, if a page has very high rank, it will contribute much more to its neighbor just by linking them once. Okay, so that is the idea. Okay, and then in every iteration, what you do is you collect the sum total of all contributions from all neighbors of a particular page. Okay, and then you sort of update the page rank by using this formula. Okay, so this formula is kind of not sacrosanct. So there are many variants of page rank, but what this formula basically says is that I will give 85% weightage to the contributions from neighbors, and with 15% weightage I will just I will equalize the rank of every page. So every page will get this 0.15 score. So even if pages which don't have any incoming rank, so they will get some score. Okay, so that is the idea. Okay, so so this is how the algorithm works. The green message, the green things here are basically the contribution. So you see, this page has a rank of 1 and it is pointing to only one page, so it is contributing 1 to this page. Okay, similarly this page also has a rank of 1, but it is pointing to two pages, so it's contributing 0.5 to each of them. Okay? So now you kind of sum up the contributions to let's say this page. So this page is getting 1 from this guy, 0.5 from this guy, and also 0.55 from this guy. Okay, So its rank becomes 1.85 and so on and so forth. Now you revise the contributions again based on the new rank. Okay, and you go like this, and then finally that you can see there are theorems showing that this will converge to a final rank. So in this case, this is the final rank. Now these are the scores. So based on this, you can calculate the rank. So as it turns out, this will get rank of 1, this will get rank of 2, this will get rank of 3, and this will get rank of 4. So you can see that the algorithm actually works. So now the question is, how will this algorithm be implemented in Spark? Okay. So in order to understand this, so let us see first what are the inputs to this. Okay. So the first input basically is an RDD called links, which contributes, which basically has for every URL, okay, uh, the neighbors that it is linking to. Okay, so every URL has links to a bunch of neighbors. Okay, so it is getting the neighbors that it is linking to. So this is like a list of neighbors. Okay, and the second RDD is kind of the output that you want to compute. Okay, it is for every URL there is a number which is the score. So we have called it rank here, but it is really the page rank score of that particular URL, the scores that we are computing. Okay, so this, assume that this has been all initialized to 1. Okay, so for every URL you have the ranks initialized to 1, and this is your data. So you have the data of the graph in the form of this links RDD. Okay, now you want to run this loop for this capital iterations many times. Okay, so we are just thinking about running it for a fixed number of iterations, and then we will check, and maybe we can run it for even more number of iterations if we think it has not converged. Okay, so how does this work? So so the first thing is that you need to get the so the common key between both these RDDs are the URLs, okay, or URLs of pages. Okay, now we need so in order to compute, so what we need to do is we need to compute the contributions, which is this contribs RDD. Okay, so contribs is an RDD which is basically computing the contributions. Okay, so in order to compute the contributions, you need both the rank and the neighbors. Okay, so because remember that every URL distributes rank by, so rank p divided by size of neighbors to all neighbors. Okay, so each neighbor, let's call this u. Okay, so how does this work? Okay, so first of all, you take this links RDD, okay, and you join it with the ranks RDD. Okay, so for each URL now, you have the URL, the neighbors that it is linking to, and its current rank. Okay, now what do? Okay, so you take the list here. So this NHB is a list of neighbors. Okay, and now you use the flat map. So for each neighbor here, okay, so dest is the neighbor. Okay, so dest is the destination of the contribution. Okay, okay, so you emit this particular record with the key destination. Okay, so the destination is where the contributions should go to. Okay, and then rank by this list dot size. Okay, so this is basically the contribution. Okay, so this is the contributions RDD. So it has basically all the messages or all the contributions from all all URLs, okay, to their neighbors. Okay, and you can understand why you are using flat map here, because here and here, because you are basically each link, okay, here, or each URL here is sending multiple contributions to all of its neighbors. Okay, now it is time to sort of reduce by key. So here, what this reduce by key is doing is it is adding up all the contributions to a particular destination. Remember, the destination is now the key. Okay, so it is adding up all the contributions to the particular neighbors. Okay, and after this it's just map values. So now you have for each destination the total contribution. Okay, and you just add that times 0.85 to 0.15, and now that is your revised ranks RDD. Okay, so you go back and now feed in this revised ranks RDD here, and you keep doing this. Okay, so this is how you implement, and at the end you can just output the ranks RDD. So this is how you implement PageRank in Spark. Okay, now another example is how do you compute pi in Spark. Okay, so the algorithm here is really simple. Okay, so the algorithm is that you consider this -1 to 1 box. Okay, so this is a box of size 2 cross 2. Okay, and you inscribe a circle in this box. Okay, then you uniformly at random you generate points inside this box. Okay, so you generate such points inside the box uniformly at random. Okay, and then you count the number of or the fraction of points which fall inside this circle. Okay, so that is kind of the area, okay, of this circle. So the area of the circle, so this has diameter 2, so the area of this circle is basically 4 pi. Okay, and the whole area of this thing, so this whole area is 4. Okay, so you basically have your pi is going to be so the ratio is something like count, okay, by n. Okay, so if count number of points are falling inside this circle and n is the total points that you have taken, then the ratio of 4 pi to the total area 4 is this is just pi. Okay, because the area of the circle is just pi r square. Okay, and r here is 1. Okay, so the area is pi r square, so count by 4 count by n should be equal to pi by 4, and hence your pi should be just 4 times count by n. Okay, so that is the formula that we are going to use. Okay, so we want to estimate this count for a given n. Okay, so how do we write this? So we just have to so you can understand that we just have to compute whether a point is inside or not. Okay, and the point has to be generated randomly. So what we do is we just generate, so we fix a value n. Okay, so n can also be taken as input, so that is what these lines are doing, and then we are just making sure that the n doesn't overflow the integer limit. Okay, and then we are just saying that for, so here really the count I doesn't matter. Okay, so we have, so here we have actually used one extra function, which is the spark context dot parallelize. Okay, so what this does is this takes a list. Okay, so 1 until n will produce a scala list. Okay, so parallelize takes a list and distributes it onto the cluster. Okay, so that is what this is going to do. Okay, depending on the number of executors. Okay, now you take each record here, and you don't really need to use the ID of the record. All you need to use is you need to generate the random coordinates of x and y, and this is what it does, because random generates a number between 0.1 so between 0 to 1. Okay, so you use this formula to generate a number between -1 to 1, and then you just compute whether it is lying within this circle of radius 1. Okay, if yes, you emit 1, otherwise you emit 0, and then you just count by reducing the adding up all the ones. Okay, so this is a simple example where so the cool thing about this example is that this is computation intensive. Okay, so there is no big data which is input. Okay, but you need to generate a lot of random numbers. Okay, and Spark is able to do it pretty well. Okay, another example, okay, of collaborative filtering. Okay, again, this is a very important data mining problem, data mining slash machine learning problem, where what you are given is these ratings matrix. Okay, so these are ratings of movies given by a set of users. So your matrix looks like this. So there is the movie cross user. So R U comma M, let's say M is the movie, so rather it should be M comma U, okay, is the rating for movie U given by movie M given by user U. Okay, now most of these ratings are not present, and your task is to have a guess at those ratings. Okay, and the way you do it is that you construct a low dimensional embedding. The lower dimension means k, so k is much less than both u and m, which is the total number of users and movies. Okay, and you construct a low dimensional embedding. Okay, where your basically rating of u comma m, okay, is a u, okay, dot b m. Okay, and you can write this, so au is basically the uth row, so let me call this small m. So au is the uth row of the matrix A. Okay, and similarly bm is the mth row of matrix B. So this computation can also be thought of like this, where it is basically A, so your R matrix is basically A B transpose. Okay, okay, so how do you so you have to compute both A and B. So how do you solve this problem? So the way to solve this problem is basically just using alternating least squares. So what do? You start with random A and B. Okay. Now you you define as you define uh, loss function that you want to minimize, and the loss function is basically a reproduction error, so reconstruction error. So you basically you do sum over u comma m and r u comma m minus this au dot uh, bm whole square. Okay, this is something you want to minimize. Okay, so this is very easily done if you hold one of them fixed. Okay, so if you hold one of them fixed, this is just the least square problem. Okay, and you can get a solution to this. Okay, so the way this problem is solved is that you first fix b, optimize for a. Okay, and then you fix a and optimize for b. Okay, and most of the time this algorithm converges. Okay, so how do you implement this in Spark? Okay, so the way to implement this in Spark is, again, you randomly initialize A and B matrices. Okay, and you have as input the ratings matrix. Now note that uh, none of these are actually RDDs here. Okay, so these are all local matrices. Okay, uh, but your computation is, let's say, done parallelly. Okay, so actually you can design uh, you can design, so we will come to the parallel version of this. Okay, uh, but the way to do it here, or the way we have done it here, is now we parallelize. So when we are optimizing over A, okay, there are basically capital U many vectors for each vector. Okay, so so you send each of these A vectors to one machine. Okay, and not only that, you send the current B vector and the current R vector. So remember, uh, the important thing here to remember is that Spark allows this through the use of closures. Okay, so what are closures? Closures are, remember, context sensitive functions. So in this case, this update user function is a context sensitive function which basically computes the optimal A, okay, optimal A row given this B and R matrix. Okay, and so you can just compute this for each user on a different machine. Okay, or each user parallelly. Okay, uh, but the key here is that the B matrix and the R matrix has to be available on that particular machine. Okay, so this is the first step. You optimize for A. Second step, you optimize for B. You keep doing it over and over again. Okay, but this is very, very computation intensive. Sorry, communication intensive. So this is very, very communication intensive. And why is it communication intensive? Because you have this whole uh, ratings data which you are shipping every time to all the machines that are actually computing the A matrix or the B matrix in parallel. Both the times you are shipping A, shipping R. Okay. Now you are also shipping B, but notice that B changes every time. So you anyway have to ship B. Okay. By the way, so this two array function here basically brings it back, and so this a again is not an RDD but a local variable. So your local variable is now being stored here. Okay. Now, since every time the B or A is changing, you anyway have to ship it to the machines. Okay. You could probably do it a little bit more smartly than this, but let us not get into that. Okay. Um, so, uh, but the R ratings matrix is constant. Okay. So, could you not ship it once to each machine at the beginning of this computation and then just use it every time? Okay, that would save a lot of the communication, because R is actually the big matrix, because A and B, remember, are only k dimensional, and k will be something like maybe 50. Okay, even though the users may be in millions, movies may also be in tens of thousands. Okay. uh, okay, so how do you do it? So you do it using this broadcast facility. Okay, so Spark has this broadcast facility. So if you set a variable, okay, using spark.broadcast, okay, so this defines a broadcast variable, and then so basically this broadcast variable dot value is actually the value of the broadcast variable. Okay, now the first time this r dot value is used, it is fetched, okay, and it is stored in the machine. Okay, and second time it doesn't have to be fetched again. Okay, because it already has the r value. Okay, so using this, you are saving on repeatedly broadcasting. So this kind of sending is called broadcasting. So you are repeatedly broadcasting B and A because they are changing every time, but you are not broadcasting R anymore. Okay, now let us discuss how caching of RDDs works. Okay, so consider the problem that you have error messages which are stored in a distributed manner into many of these worker nodes. Okay, uh, okay. Now you want to uh, interactively search for various patterns. Okay, so remember, we have seen many iterative algorithms. We have not seen many interactive algorithms. Okay, so suppose you want to interactively search for various patterns. Okay, so how do you do it? Okay, so first of all, you read into Spark the base RDD. Okay, so then you filter the lines with error. Okay, so uh, you only want the log messages which result in an error. Okay, so you have a transformed RDD now. Okay, uh, and then you have the messages where you basically take the second part of the uh, errors. Okay, uh, now you call, all of these are RDDs. Okay, now you call this cache function on an RDD. So what it does, it is it marks this cached messages as a cached RDD. Okay, so Spark knows that this is an RDD which has to be cached. Okay, now suppose you want to search for, let's say, error message foo. Okay, foo is just a thing, so you want to search for 404, or let's say it's a web server log. Okay, uh, you know so you want to see how many 404s you got. Okay, uh, so you just filter on the 404s and then you count. Okay, uh, now this count is an action. So this whole right from the beginning, the graph starts executing. Okay, and this creates these blocks or partitions of the RDDs. Okay, and then you get back the results. Okay, so you have, rather you have these blocks of data stored on the distributed file system. Okay, and you have got you have got them, you have got the data to the workers. Okay, and the workers have done this processing and they have returned you the results. Okay, but additionally note that while getting these results, they note that one of the RDDs, this cached messages, is a cached RDD. Okay, so they now store this in the memory of this worker. Okay, so this filtering and everything is done, and after that, the distilled results, which are just the error messages, okay, they are stored in the server. Okay, now next time you search for bar now, so you search for some other error message. Okay, you are interactively searching. Okay, now it will just hit the cache. Okay, it will not go to the block anymore. Okay, it will just hit the cache and return the results. Okay, so this is how caching speeds up interactive or iterative applications. Okay, and so text search on Wikipedia. So this is some results with a certain number of servers. They could achieve it in under 1 second as opposed to 20 seconds. Okay, so if the first search count, this one would return in 20 seconds, this one would return in under 1 second. Okay, uh, okay, and they could search through like like 1 terabyte of data in 5 to 7 seconds, whereas for the on disk version they had to use so it took about 170 seconds. Okay, so this is the advantage of caching. Okay, so now let us come to how Spark Scheduler works. Okay, so the way Spark Scheduler works is that once you define, so we have already discussed this. So once you write the program, okay, the transformations define a directed acyclic graph. Okay, so the transformation defines a directed acyclic graph like this. Okay, so here let's say uh, A, B, C, D, E, F, G are all RDDs. Okay, and each RDD has many partitions. So the boxes inside the RDDs are the partitions of the RDD. Okay, these can potentially be on different machines. Okay, uh, now what Spark does is it constructs this lineage graph. Okay, so the lineage graph, as we discussed, is the graph between RDDs. Okay, so the lineage graph is graph between RDDs, so it knows which RDD is dependent on which RDD. But there is this DAG. Okay, it's simply called DAG, which is a graph between partitions. Okay, so not only do you track the dependencies between the, so in this case the lineage graph would look something like this: A to B, C to D. Okay, both of these depend, I mean F depends on both of these, and then G depends on both of these. Okay, so this is just the lineage graph, or you could also put the arrows backward, that G depends on these two, this depends on this depends on these two, and this depends on this. Okay, so that is the lineage graph. Okay, now not all dependencies are same. Okay, so what Spark does is it distinguishes between fat dependencies and narrow dependencies. Okay, so what are these? So fat dependencies are dependencies like this, where when an RDD B depends on an RDD A, every partition of RDD B depends on every partition of RDD A. So for example, you could have these operations like group by. Okay, group by basically has to have a kind of a shuffle, because every key here, okay, I mean rather, so a key should land up here in one of the partitions, okay, but every partition here could have that key, so there is a shuffle operation going on here. Okay, so this is a fat dependency. On the other hand, if you see a map, okay, or a union, these are narrow dependencies. Okay, so one record may generate many other records, or many records may shrink to one record, but one partition generates another partition. So there is no way a map output of this partition is going to be needed to generate data from this partition, or generate data which is in this partition. Okay, so there is kind of a one-to-one correspondence between the records in partitions here and records in partitions here. Okay, such dependencies are called narrow dependencies. Okay, so what Spark does, it is pipelines functions into stages. Okay, so it has to execute this graph. Okay, now it pipelines the narrow dependencies. Okay, so all this can be computed in just one stage. Okay, because there is no shuffle involved here. Okay, from here to here, the the Spark scheduler could just launch a task which will compute the output of this function, feed it to the output of this function, compute the output of this function, feed it to the output of this function, compute this partition. So from this partition to this partition to this partition, it will compute it, have this partition computed, then come to this one. It does not have to compute this, which is an earlier work, okay, which is an earlier dependency, part of an earlier dependency, in order to compute this. Okay, so this is what pipelining does. Okay, so pipelining basically uh, uh, it partitions the computation into stages. Okay, so there are three stages here: stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3. Okay, so the first stage is just computation here. Okay, uh, but then so here there is probably just some reading. Okay, or wherever this RDDA came from. Okay, uh, and then there is the shuffle here. Okay, so this shuffle, so notice that there is a narrow dependency between this and this. Okay, so this computation could be pipelined. Okay, so so what the Spark would do is it would perform this computations in stage 2, this computation in stage 1, and in stage 3 it would perform this shuffle and this shuffle together. Okay, because you see the input to this shuffle is available, the input to this shuffle is available, and once this shuffle is performed, after that you can just pipeline the operations to come here. Okay, so 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 this is how at a high level Spark executes things, and you can of course Spark uses cache aware. So if any of these RDDs are already cached, then it will not go back. So it will use cache aware reuse, and also it will take care of locality. So if so for example, uh, it may generate so if we will come to this, so if uh, there is a one-to-one correspondence between the output of an RDD, okay, uh, the keys of an output RDD and an input RDD, the partitions of the so this output RDD will be co-partitioned with the input RDD. Okay, that is how it ensures data locality. We will see this through an example. Okay, and this is precisely the point here, that partitioning our RDDs to avoid unnecessary shuffles. Okay, the necessary shuffles have to be performed, but unnecessary shuffles can be avoided. Okay, so this is more detailed description. Okay, so as we mentioned, user code defines a directed acyclic graph, as we discussed. Operations on RDDs create new RDD that refer back to their parents, thereby creating the graph. So this forms a directed acyclic graph. Okay. Actions force translation. Okay, like we have discussed earlier also. When you are just providing transformations, only the graph is being built, no action is being performed. Only when a particular action is performed, that so here materialization will start only when you have an action here. Okay, uh, okay, and once an action starts, then the so the directed acyclic graph may be a big graph. Okay, so there may be many different actions. For example, there could be an action here which says, write this RDD. So in this case, this is only dependent on this. So only this part of the graph needs to be executed. Okay, this part of the graph is redundant. Okay, even though it's part of the program. Okay, so remember, each job is dependent on an action. Okay, so so there are two or three terms we should know here. So one is a job, then there is a stage, and then there is a task. Okay, so there could be many tasks within a stage. Okay, stages are performed one by one, and there could be many stages which complete a job. In this case, there are three stages to complete the job of, let's say, generating and writing this RDD G. Okay, so so when you call an action on an RDD, its parents must be computed. That job will have one or more stages. Okay, with tasks for each partition. So each stage will have again many tasks, typically one for each partition. Okay, each stage will correspond to one or more RDD in the DAG. Okay, we have discussed this. A single stage can correspond to multiple RDDs because Spark does this pipelining. Okay, uh, okay. So the execution plan here, by the way, is the part of the DAG that is going to be actually executed for a particular action to complete. Okay. Uh, Tasks are scheduled and executed on a cluster. Okay. Stages are processed in order with individual tasks launching to compute the segments of the RDD. Once the final stage is finished, the action is complete. Okay. So what does the task, so now we have seen the connection between a job, stage, and a task. Okay. Now, if what does a task do internally? Okay. So a task basically has three things. Fetching is input. So it can be, so the input can be from storage. Okay. If the RDD is an input RDD, from storage. Okay, so uh, this is like the case where you are reading a file, or even like you are using a parallelize. In parallelize, actually it doesn't have to fetch any input. Okay, so So basically this is something like sc.txt file, spark context.txt file, where you are actually reading a file from HDFS. Okay, and or it could be reading its input from an existing RDD. We have seen this, okay, because the previous RDD has finished executing, and so it could be so it could be an RDD in the same stage, or it could be an RDD in the previous stage. Okay, but it has to read this output records from an existing RDD, or it could be from shuffle outputs if it is reading data from something like a previous stage. Okay, so the option, so it may be the operation may be fat one with a fat dependency, in which case the previous stage has ended. Okay, and then there are these shuffle outputs which are available uh, uh, in usually they are stored in the local file system, just like in Hadoop, and in that case it has to get that. Okay, uh, okay, and uh, it has to, of course, perform the operations like filter, map, whatever. Okay, that are needed. So basically these are functions which you are passing to it, and it has to execute it, and then uh, writing the output to a shuffle. Okay, so so this is the case where your stage is ending, and the output of the task is basically a shuffle. So in this case it has to write it to a shuffle output to some task, or it may have to write it to external storage, something like save as something like the save function, where it has to write it to HDFS. Okay, or it may have to write the output back to the driver, something like count or take or this kind of actions, which actually uh, take the output of the RDD and then take that back to the driver program for processing. Okay, we have seen this in many programs. Okay, so now we want to describe. So let us go to the problem of user log mining. Now here the problem is to get the number of off-topic visits. Okay, so what do you have? You have two types of data. One is user data. So in user data, you have the user's ID and user info, which is basically the topics that the user is interested in. Okay, and you have so now the second type of data is this events data. Okay, so the events data is basically for each user ID you have a link. Okay, uh, where the user has visited, and this link info again uh, includes the topic of that link. So topic could be something like sports, sports or music or news or something like that. Okay? For simplicity you can think like this. Okay, uh, now you have defined this function process new logs. Okay, which takes this log file name. So it will of course read this log file. Okay, then it has to find the off topic visits. So it has to first know what are the user's topics. Okay, so it has to join this user data with events. Okay, and then it has to filter. So now it has, after joining, it has for each user the user info and the link info. So user info has the user's topics and link info has the topics of the link, the user that you have visited. Now you filter okay, so maybe you filter the other way around. So instead of having contents, okay, you have something like does not contain. Okay, so if user info topics, okay, does not contain the link info topic, okay, then you want to output that record, otherwise you don't want. Okay, and then you want to count the number of such records. Okay, and then you just report the number of visits to non-subscribed topics. Okay, so this is your task. Okay, now think about these two RDDs. Okay, so you have the user data RDD and you have the events RDD, but you also have the joined RDD. Okay, now you see this joined RDD, unless anything is mentioned, this joined RDD, every record of this joint RDD is dependent on every record of the user data RDD and every record of the events RDD. So it's a fat dependency on both sides. Okay, but it does not have to be. Okay, so what you could have is, you could have, let's say user data is the bigger of the so you could have this output joined RDD co-partitioned or co-located in a data locality sense with one of these RDDs. So let's say user data is the RDD which is bigger, so we want joined to be co-located with the user data RDD. Okay, so that whenever a new event comes, okay, this part of the data doesn't have to be moved, only this part of the data will be moved. Okay, so how do you do that? Okay, so you do that by using this so you do that by using this partition by function. Okay, yeah, so you do that by using this partition by function. Okay, and you can use any partitioner. They have used here a hash partitioner which creates 100 partitions. Okay, now since you have used an existing partitioner for this user data RDD, when you call user data.join, okay, this join will actually keep the resultant RDD co-partitioned with the starting RDD. Okay, so then you get dependencies like this. So on this side you get narrow dependencies, on this side you get fat dependencies. Okay, so here the transfer of data is very minimal. So all the keys for a particular partition of user data, okay, they stay on the local machine of joint. Events is shuffled, okay, to get the appropriate keys to the appropriate partitions. Okay, and then you get the joined RDD. Okay, so what are the operations benefiting from partitioning? Okay, so yeah, so co-group, group with join, left outer join, right outer join, group by key, reduce by key, and combine by key, and lookup. These are which benefit from partitioning. Okay, So basically, if you okay, so you if you call these operations on a partitioned RDD, for which the partitioning has been set, the partitioner has been set previously somehow, okay, then the operation will run much faster because the resultant will be co-partitioned with that particular operation. Okay, so these are the operations which will run faster for the partitioning. Okay, now which are the operations affecting the partitioning? That is, once you have set the partitions, which are the operations which will uh, you know uh, put for so they will carry forward the partitioners. Okay, so all the operations which benefit, okay, excepting lookup, okay, all the operations which benefit typically, of course, maintain the partitioning. Also, map values, okay, flat map values, filters, okay, all of this, if the parent RTD has a partitioner, okay, they carry forward the partitioner to the next operation, because so these induce narrow dependencies, so these can just carry forward the partitioner. Okay, uh, okay, okay, so how do we use this partitioner to make the page rank algorithm that we earlier saw? How can we make it faster? Okay, so if you remember, we had this links RDD, okay, and every time we were doing this join with links. Okay, so now we will just add a partitioner to the links RDD. Okay, and uh, then we will just, so this program is exactly the program that we described earlier. Okay, it's exactly the same program. Okay, here we are just running it for 10 iterations. Okay, but this will run much faster, because see, every time so links is a partition RDD, so contributions is going to be a partition RDD. Okay, and now when you do a contributions uh, okay, yeah, so contributions will be a partition RDD. So here you have the reduce by key and then map values. Okay, so these will carry forward the uh, the partitioning. Okay, so now your ranks RDD is actually co-partitioned using the same partitioner as the links RDD. So next join is going to be a local join. Okay, again this reduce by key will have a shuffle. Okay, but the shuffle at this join stage is basically eliminated after the first join. Okay, uh, actually even the first join will not happen, because what we have done is we have used map values here with links. Okay, so both of them have URLs as keys, so we have used map values, so even this one will be co-partitioned with links. So this join is basically not a fat dependency anymore, because they are using the same partition. Okay, so the last topic is accumulators. Okay, so Spark also provides this thing called accumulators, which allow each task to send some updates, okay, back to the driver program. Okay, and how do they do it? They do it using this thing called accumulator. Okay, so so let us say this blank lines is an accumulator, okay, and you are sort of, you have a very large text file, okay, and you are trying to count the number of blank lines, okay, in this text file, okay. So this is a distributed thing, okay. So you call so you read the you read this into the file, okay. This is the RDD, which file RDD, which reads basically the text file in a distributed manner. uh, then you call a flat map, which basically takes the line, and if the line is a blank one, then it does this blank lines plus one, okay. um, okay, so it adds to the accumulators, okay. uh, okay, and this basically is your RDD call signs, okay. So so the results is yeah, so the result is stored in this okay, so okay, yeah, so this actually what you see is that yeah, this is not so useful, okay. So it is splitting using space, so it is basically getting the words in the line, but what you are really interested in is the number of blank lines, okay. So this is just so that you know your flat map output some value, okay, and once it has output something, okay, uh, you just call an action, so that, so up till now it's all transformation, so nothing will be executed, so you call the action save as text file, okay, and this so it writes the words in this output.text, but in the accumulator called blank lines, it has already collected this output, okay. So this is one way of sending small updates back here, okay. So now you can just print blank lines dot value to count the number of blank lines, okay. This is another feature. Typically this feature is used for a lot of progress monitoring and things like that, less useful for other things, because you could do it the usual way by just counting, okay. Okay, so we have discussed many things, okay. uh, so this is the book that you want to follow, learning fast. So there is a later book, okay, but this is the 2015 edition, so I am following this book, okay. uh, because the later book has things like data frames, which were introduced in Spark version, I think version 2, and then mostly they focus on that due to performance reasons on Spark version 3 onwards, okay. uh, yeah, so I find this book sort of more interesting. Okay, thank you.